Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with Gareth for your Talking Tactics show. We've had to squeeze this in filmed on location from work, but we couldn't leave you without the show, and we couldn't not talk about the comeback win against Wolves. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, help us on the road to 5,000 subscribers. We're getting close, very, very close. I think about 20 more needed for 4,700 on the road to 5K. So like, subscribe, and get your comments in. Gareth, how are you doing, mate? Great to see you, and another comeback win.
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, I mean, to go a goal behind again is not ideal, obviously, and you start to fear the worst eventually. But actually, this time you kind of didn't fear the worst for a change, which is kind of, you thought they would end up doing it. First half, it didn't really look that way, did it? But I mean, eventually they did well.
Yes, and you kind of felt that the substitutions, the momentum, Wolves maybe running out of steam a little bit, all those things combined together, and that quality that Villa have now, it always was going to tell in the end if we did what we needed to do.
Yeah, I think the two, was it Barkley and Maatsen at half time, wasn't it? And I think that
Bailey and Maatsen half time, Barkley, Duran kind of half hour.
Yes, so there you go.
To go.
I think for me, and I've been critical, and I got knocked again for it on Twitter, but Barkley was instrumental, absolutely instrumental, and inspired substitution. I think we're going to see that a lot from Onana and things, that swapping of the players. But yeah, I mean, the Maatsen, maybe you could probably say not so much, but the stretching of the play for Leon Bailey to push Aït-Nouri back, their main attacking threat, was really good substitution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got loads and loads of slides to show you. We got great feedback from last week about the detail that Gareth goes into. So we've continued on that vein. First of all, tail of the tape, the stats. Anything in particular that this is telling us about the game on Saturday?
No, I mean, 63% of the time spent, in the opposition final third, which is the field tilt, which is obviously really good. And we can see that the average length for the goal kicks, for example, we're playing out short from 18 metres, and compared to Wolves, who were just knocking it long at 32, knowing that they were probably under pressure. And yeah, just a lot of sort of different sort of stats just to give an overall thing of the game. And the PPDA is quite interesting, and the aerial wins are quite interesting, sort of 17 apiece, or attempted 7 and 10. So yeah, not a massive amount between them.
No, just that clinical finishing, and like I say, making the momentum count. Like Wolves had a couple of opportunities after they went 1-0 up, didn't take them. Villa took their chance and then continued to go on and win the game, which was majorly important.
Yeah, I think it's just basically, if you're not winning, bring on John Duran, your problem.
Yeah, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this show?
There's no analysis needed. Just bring on John Duran every game.
Talking of Duran, obviously he loves the shot. We've got the shot map here. Again, anything to sort of discuss here? Anything that shot out to you? No pun intended.
I mean, sort of 5 big chances, 3 taken. It's kind of, I still think that those 2 chances, forgive me, but I think the one behind that star, the white one, is Ollie Watkins' chance. I can't remember who that one on that left-hand side was, but those sort of chances we could probably do with taking a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it was his header maybe that got cleared off the line, I would say. Yeah.
It's just those sort of chances. We wanted it last week where he wasn't clinical enough with his heading, and he was a little bit weak. And I think that is a bit of a thing of Watkins' game. He isn't as strong as what people, he sort of doesn't use his size enough.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the header he scored against Michael Keane. I'm liking the way he's staying in the air for longer, but maybe that is an area where, he's a great all rounder, isn't he? And I'm sure he'll want to improve on that, and he'll want to improve in a lot of aspects of his game. Our usual one, passing networks. Again, anything to sort of discuss here? Anything that you picked up upon in terms of where our positioning was, what type of passes we were making?
Oh, well, 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 we see a right-sided bias for a change as compared
Mm,
to what we normally see on the left-hand side. And I think this is pretty much where we can say the substitutions changed the game, because you can see a little bit of left-sided that we're used to, as we speak about often, Martinez to Pau to Dino, etc., etc. But here there was a lot of passes across to Diego Carlos, heavily involved in the passing network, and especially out to Esri Konsa on this right-hand side. And we can see number 31, Leon Bailey. That is his average position pretty much throughout the season. So they look to utilise Leon Bailey a lot. I do wonder, looking back, whether it was a ploy, how much of a threat they saw Aït-Nouri in that first half and thought to themselves, do you know what, we'll see how it pans out, see what sort of a threat he is. If so, we can nullify it, but let's not show our hand with Leon Bailey too early.
yeah. It's interesting because we did our match reaction last night, and I don't know if it was Sam or George mentioned about Pau Torres not being as involved in those passes from the start, and you've highlighted it there that it was Carlos making those passes.
Yeah, I think it was a tactic. I think it's just a bit of a and we've been crying out for it, Rich, on this show. You know,
Mm,
how do we can we switch it up a little bit? Can we play more down that right hand side? And I think with Konsa being that sort of right side, I think that allows that to happen. I think that allows that to happen because he is a good player on the ball. He probably is better than Diego Carlos, you know, but it just allows you to utilize him and Leon Bay. He's not so good going forward, Leslie Konsa.
yeah,
Let's be honest, that's not his game. But that allows him to sit, to Leon Bailey to go. And I just think that I noticed it a lot on straight away. I thought we're not playing a lot of passes down this left hand side, and was Digne fit enough? Not quite
mm,
sure. It didn't
yeah,
seem like he might well have not been. But yeah, it was a definite change in tactic, and it was done on purpose.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I wonder if Matty Cash, Lamar Bogard filling in those positions, but Esri Konsa, you lose obviously the quality that he's got at centre back, but because he's so good at 1v1 defending, putting him at right back means that Leon Bailey doesn't necessarily have to do as much of the defensive work, and then you're almost getting, it's weighing up what's the best advantage for you. You know, obviously you get a bit of drive and running forward with Matty Cash, but you lose a bit of 1v1 defending. But with Ezri Konsa at the back, you get the 1v1 defending, maybe less attack, but you allow Leon Bailey just to go, right, just play your game, go and do what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's you've summed it up nicely. And I think Wolves' only threat was Aït-Nouri, really. Let's say so. You know, that's quite easy to nullify. Attack is the best form of defence if you want to go
Yeah,
that way. And the
yeah,
introduction of Leon Bailey, I think, was an important one.
yeah. This one, I really like this slide. A lot of people giving you a lot of credit on this on X as well. The passing sonars. So just talk to us a little bit about this because I know you had a couple of questions about it as well.
Yeah, I worked a lot with sort of Gary Davis on this, another guy on Twitter who's a really good sort of with his Python and his code and everything. Tried to work together on this to try and get something a little bit sort of up on the MPL soccer sort of stuff, a little bit more defined. And it's really interesting because it not only shows sort of like the flow of the passing, where they're going with it, but we've also sort of managed to get in the average positions of the players as well. So we can see where those passes are going from those players in those positions. And obviously you're looking at a centre forward, often on a centre forward tends to pass the ball backwards because
Yeah,
he's the highest man up the pitch. But yeah, really interesting that you can see Konsa close to sort of John McGinn on that right hand side, and that's just what wasn't working. And that's because John McGinn was having to defend too much. Can we go the other way? Yes, we can, because we can bring on Leon Bailey, so we can stretch it out. And we saw from the passing networks that it worked out well. And it's just a case of these midfield. We're starting to see Onana sitting a lot more, and Tielemans being able to go. So that's a new sort of a thing we've sort of developed throughout the season so far. But it's the left side. We look higher on that left hand side, but yet we know that most of the activity come down the right hand side. But that's of course probably more of the second half than the first.
yeah, exactly. And then the story of the game in terms of the threat, the rolling threat, anything that you picked up upon here?
No, I mean, I expected to see more XT really, and an expected threat from Wolves in that first half, but we didn't really see it. It was kind of we were controlling the game, we had sort of the control, even though Wolves were sort of the better team in the first half. We still had fairly good control of the game, but we talk about it a lot. Important goals at important times. 65, you're 85, just after, and then later on in the game as well, just to tie it up. So yeah, it's important. It's important to score goals at the right times.
Definitely. Goalkeepers, always focus of attention. Anything to discuss here in terms of their threat in terms of XG, in terms of goals faced and goals prevented?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up earlier when you said that we were clinical, and this shows it. Johnson couldn't make a save. These three shots, you could say, are centre of the goal. We don't know the goalkeeper's positioning at these times, but it's pretty clinical, isn't it? Three shots, three goals. In that aspect. So it's important, and with Martinez sort of preventing 0.012, which is he's usually in the minus the last couple of games, so it's good to see that he sort of managed to pick up and make a few good saves.
Yeah, he did. He did make a couple of good ones as well. So, yeah, that was key because again, like you said, key times. If they'd have gone 2-0 up at half time, it would have been another potential difficult barrier to get over. So
Yeah,
definitely. Just bringing this one up. So the part Emi Martinez pass map. Again, obviously we knew he went over to Diego Carlos quite a bit. Is and then longer passes. Is that something that he's starting to do a little bit more, or did you expect more from him in terms of that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know sort of the timings of the longer passes, but I mean, I think probably the free kicks we might be able to say are later on in the game, the goal kicks as well. But yeah, we can see a little bit more sort of that right-sided thing. Then average pass length is about 24 meters, so we could obviously say that that's pretty much just outside of the penalty area. And we know that he went short to Carlos on great deal of occasion. So yeah, more of a right-sided, you could say more on the right side there, probably just about. But yeah, important.
Yeah. And then looking at kind of the chances and where our passes ended up ultimately to create these chances. So the pass end locations first, looking in those midfield areas, is that the 8% that those where the Morgan Rogerses and the Jacob Ramseys might be? Is that what we're saying here?
Exactly that. That's what we're talking about. And we know that we play a 4-2-2-2 kind of shape. It was a little bit mixed on Saturday, but yeah, it's important that the players are picking up. This is where Rodgers and, as you rightly say, Ramsey take up positions. We could argue that Tielemans is probably in amongst that as well, but clearly the highest percentages are across that middle to final third there, and that's middle third, let's say,
Yeah,
advanced middle
yeah,
third.
yeah.
Yeah, so, but that's important, and that's where we're obviously picking up the balls. We know that we like to play a high line. We're dominant in possession. So, yeah, it's interesting to see that.
And the half spaces, everyone loves talking about this. Looking at the zone 14 as well. Again, just explain what you mean by that for people who've just stumbling on this podcast. And we introduced this one last week.
Yeah, the half spaces are obviously the purple ones. We're looking at sort of those areas that are more inside than they are outside, and the zone 14 is the area just in front of the penalty area. And this kind of tallies up with the previous slide with the pass percentage locations. We can see that if we were to match that up, those passes are being advanced into those half spaces from those 8% positions. And again, Morgan and Ramsey we're talking about. So this tallies up just quite nicely. But yeah, 36 half space passes, probably more right-sided dominant there again. And we can see we're a little bit more right-sided dominant on the zone 14 passes as well in that half.
It's one of those, isn't it, where you think, obviously, if we got through at the start of the game, great, and we managed to score a goal, but you can almost see that. I think I mentioned this last week. You know how Liverpool used to just keep going down in the wide areas under Klopp. Robertson and Trent, and just keep overlapping, and at some time the team that were facing that would eventually just crumble. You can see here with Villa, it's just keep trying to go through the middle, keep playing those penetrating passes, because at some point it'll open up for you. The team that you're facing will get tired, and Morgan Rogers will get that pass through to Watkins, or Yuri Tielemans will be able to get that little space away from the defender, or Bailey will be able to get the jink past and get the cross in. If you just keep doing it, and that's eventually what's happening.
Yeah, I think so. And especially, like you say, when Rodgers, all it takes is for him to receive that ball behind the line and manage to turn, and he's at the defence, and then you're working it. We don't tend to sort of play out wide in a great deal of areas, do we? Apart from, let's say, your odd Luca Digne cross and you Leon Bailey, who tends to try and go inside more than often. So it's a clear plan of action, what they are trying to do, and it's really obvious, not just from the data, but obviously from watching the game.
Yeah, yeah. And then the chance where eventually those chances would be created, two from the left or three from the left side, and then two kind of left portion of the box, which if most of our play was down the right, it's quite interesting to see that as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And we can also see that most of the three of Wolves' sort of 7 chances there are actually being created from corners. So that gives us a little bit of a, are we conceding too many chances again from set pieces? Is that starting to creep in a little bit?
I remember Mina had one headed in there, and then there was a couple of bounce downs in the box and stuff. We managed to get clearances. So yeah, someone like a Tyrone Mings potentially coming back in against these big, more physical sides will obviously help to combat that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that's what it needs. I do think we do need a bit more of an aerial presence in the box, I think.
And then defensive shape. You mentioned John McGinn and Ezri Konsa kind of overlapping there, which is quite interesting. And then all across that left side, a lot of players drawn to that position.
Yeah, because we know that Aït-Nouri plays down that right, sort of he's sort of swap positioned a lot, so we know that that's happening down that right hand side. But what I found interesting about Wolves, their defensive shape here is a reflection on the 2 8%, let's say, and those pass end locations, because we know that we played in the half spaces, we know we played in those 8% positions that we talked about earlier. So we'd expect the Wolves to be a narrow shape, and they are really narrow, and they try to sort of make it as compact as they can, but we're just too good on the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the substitutions, Maatsen and Bailey, were so important to just bring them out just a little bit more. Like Aït-Nouri couldn't get into the middle as much because he had to deal with Bailey, and Maatsen was pushing an extra 10-15 yards than what Digne was. So that then meant that those little holes opened up for Morgan Rogers and, ultimately John Duran when he came on to exploit. So yeah, it was great tactical plan from Unai Emery in the end. Great decision making.
It was. Yeah, the substitutions made all the difference, I think.
Yeah. And then finally, just our zones of control. Villa, fairly dominant in a number of areas. I guess we're surmising from this.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because Wolves sort of were quite dominant, as we can see, on the flanks almost, we could say, and apart from the contested areas, let's say. But yeah, on that right hand side, we know that this is Diego Carlos' zone, for example. So a lot to be said about that. It's kind of a mixed messaging, really, in terms of zones of control. But we know, again, we talked about it. For those 8% positions, they're in the same squares again. We were dominant in those positions.
Yeah. So all in all, like we just summed up there, a good controlled performance, ultimately with a bit of a sloppy play for their goal and a great finish, but the clinicalness from Villa and the substitutions really won in the end.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. Like I said before, I think the substitutions really did change the game in our favour. And like I say, to push Aït-Nouri back, I think that was really, really important.
Going into Ipswich this Sunday, they've been a fairly spirited side, but if Villa have aspirations to kind of get into those top positions, they've got to be looking at maximising the points in that game, and ultimately using this control in games and the threat they've got from the bench to take advantage.
Yeah, we should be winning. That's the sort of game we should be winning, shouldn't we? Home or away, it shouldn't really matter to us. We're sort of a bit of a level above them, you would say, even though, like you said, Ipswich are a very spirited side, but we should be winning games like that.
Yeah, Yeah, well, we will be here to reflect on that, whether it's a win or a defeat. Gareth, once again, fantastic analysis here. Really, really good information. Something that we said before, you can't really get anywhere else. So, where can people find you to kind of raise any points, ask any questions, and just generally interact?
Yeah, just get me at One Villa Analysis, and obviously we've got a big thanks to Adnan again for the code, the original code that I've adapted, because it's really helped us out and forward in our analysis on here. So yeah, big thanks to him.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, like I say, we'll be back next week for talking tactics, reflecting on that Ipswich game. Make sure you smash that like button and hit that subscribe button. Help us on the road to 5K. Get your comments in as well. Any questions, anything you want Gareth to look into as well, we will try our best to get that done for you. We'll be back later this week with plenty more shows talking tactics. We're doing talking tactics, the fans forum, and match preview for Ipswich, both from the opposition and our own perspective as well. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.